Morning,
Good
Jericho.
morning. Good morning. This is Coffee with the Summerland Kids. I'm Jericho Woggon. This is Aaron Riggs. And we are looking at this is episode 84. And it is currently 61 degrees in Summerland with a high of 77 with a dense fog advisory. So, dense fog, Scooby Doo, scary. Where are you?
Scooby-Doo scary. I love it. That
Yeah.
dense fog. I don't know if you've ever been through like Fresno area, the valley. They get that Thule fog
Uh huh.
where you just can't see literally. It is kind of spooky, and it does seem like Scooby-Doo style where people come out of the fog. You can't even see them.
Yeah, and I remember. I think I remember. I don't know where those horns were coming from, but I could have sworn that we used to have like fog horns, and it may have been coming off the oil derrick because one of my neighbors, him and his buddy, it was Mike and Tony, and they used to row because they were a little bit older than us. They were when we were 10, they were probably like 14 or something,
Okay.
And so they were ahead of us, and they were into fishing, and they would row a little boat out there, and I think they made it all the way to Derek's in a freaking rowboat.
Oh wow, that's a pretty far one.
It is pretty far, pretty gutsy, And I remember actually them catching on one occasion for sure a shark, and it's probably like maybe a 4.5 footer or something like that, which still seemed pretty vicious because a freaking dog. With a mean dog with sharp teeth, a shark is even meaner. It seems like with those teeth are like razor sharp.
Yeah, so, and I guess if you're a teenager, just probably one of those little dinghy-sized rowboats.
Yeah, dinghy-sized rowboat. Yeah,
that 4.5 foot shark could be half the size of your boat.
I know, right? Yeah, dude. So that was like, all we caught was freaking sand sharks. I don't even think I ever caught a halibut. I had a lot of friends caught halibut though. That was always the kind of like the mystic fish or something off the coast of Summerland was a real halibut, for eating at least.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We caught a lot of what they call like ronquidors or something. They were just like little, it's almost like a baby trout or something, or a fat little fat trout.
Yeah, the coolest thing I've ever seen caught on fishing, on shore fishing, or we used to fish off the SEAWALL there.
Right.
My mom's boyfriend caught a lobster one time.
Oh my God! Wow. Was it big? Was it pretty good size? Do you remember how big?
He had it on the line. He's like, "Oh, guys, we're fishing." He's like, "Oh, there's a nibble. Oh, that's a lobster." So he knew what it was right off the bat. And he's like, "I'll just give it a little line, give it some time and some line, let it get tangled up." And so he let it go. And then he's like, "I got to reel it in real slow." And he got it all the way up to the bottom of the rock wall.
Wow.
And it got off the line, but he jumped down off the SEAWALL and grabbed that lobster. And we had lobster that night.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow. Yeah, that was always kind of funny because that SEAWALL was like, from what it was a good height. There was areas like when you first begin the SEAWALL, it was a little shorter, but then down on the very end where the fishing mainly happened, that SEAWALL was, I would say 12 feet up.
Yeah, good 10 to 12 feet for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good size SEAWALL. That would have been amazing to watch those guys make that happen. I don't know. That had to have been if I had to guess, the 1960s, when it was built. That would have been cool to watch that. That's a lot of cement. It seems like a solid mass of cement, that thing,
Yeah, it's amazing. It used to, in the higher tides and stuff, and the bigger waves, the waves would crash right up on it.
Yeah.
I wonder how long it'll last, though.
I know it's pretty darn. Bulletproof. I'd imagine maybe some patching, but like that one house that's built over there, I think they kind of own it, or at least maybe they maintain that front area by their house. I don't know how big their property is, but I know they have a little They have essentially a private road that runs. You go over the train tracks by Lookout Park, like we go into the entrance, and then right there was a little road with a private gate. So they were like kind of like back in the day, they were kind of ahead of the curve on having their own little gated house situation. Private road.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in Summerland or maybe it was in when I was living in San Luis Obispo, but I remember maybe one or two people had kind of set up a camp, a makeshift camp up on the side of the hill, and that was their house.
Oh yeah, no,
right,
for sure.
House there.
Yeah, I remember that too. Like there was a guy named Reg, and I think his son's name was Dean, and they were like resident Summerlanders, with us, but they were I think at least Reg, the dad, some of these guys, they're like classic characters, like real life hobos, but hobos who kind of found a place to call home, and Summerland was their home. And they would hang out at the park all day, down by the on the far end by the picnic bench, and just chill out, chill and I mean, it was pretty a nice. I would say, as far as hobo culture, pretty swank kind of like style, living in a city park, or at least hanging out there during the day. And then there was lots of like cool. The bamboo forest, there was multiple bamboo forests that we used to hang out in. And there was like, as kids, we go through these tunnels, and it was like freaking, I want to say the weirdest, coolest situation as kids to have. Cause I mean, some kids just grow up in a neighborhood and all you have is house, driveway, blah, whatever. But Summerland was much different than that. I mean, we had like behind, that hill, whatever that street was that Dan lived on, when you just go straight up the hill, kind of by Taylor's, and keep going straight, you end up on that little mountain, and it was all brush and anise and just different types of weeds, but overgrown to such a level where it was above our head as kids. It was just an adventure.
Yeah, we used to take that anise and like strip out the little cork kind of feeling of it, and get some flavor, chew the seeds, kind of have a flavor.
Exactly.
Kind of
totally
nature's bubble gum. And
right.
You couldn't blow bubbles out of it, but you could definitely chew it. And some of them anise seeds, you get some good flavor if you enjoy that kind of flavor. I still enjoy a nice piece of black licorice flavor every now and then.
Yeah, I don't know how we figured that out as kids, but I don't remember our parents showing it. It was almost like other kids showing other kids, you can eat this. And of course it smelled kind of cool, and it tasted good. I mean, it wasn't like we were eating it for like a meal. We were just kind of just chewing on it for fun flavor style,
Yeah.
In between those, what was it called? That dipping sticks. Dipping that one stick inside the powdered sugar.
The fun dip,
God. Talk about like and then like what is it? I remember when like Big League Chew came out, and Bubble Yum and Double Bubble and all those weird candies. It was almost like, forget about social media trends. It was all about candy trends for us.
Oh yeah, that Big League Chew. I remember taking that, just getting a mouthful of that. Chewing up that Big League Chew. And,
right. Yeah.
It was like a lot of gum in that pack.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the candy companies knew that they had, of course there was a nationwide, what I've realized is that nationwide, the kids were all on the same page, more or less. I mean, somehow we got dealt with, whatever the cool things were happening, with the BMX bikes, before that we were riding our big wheels or, trikes or whatever we were doing was all, kind of like marketed through the frickin' Sears catalog or wherever we got our information,
Yeah, that was the the big wheels and what was the big green machine had
the green
had
machine.
You didn't have a steering wheel or handlebars. You had the little levers. I guess like a lawnmower.
Yeah, right.
You turned like that rather than having a steering wheel or the handlebars. That was really cool. You get going and then hit it real hard and then do a slide out kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Original drift car.
Right. Yeah. I'm surprised none of us. I mean, we had a pretty. Thankfully, none of our friends ever died when we were that young. I mean, I had some friends that passed from like cancer and different ailments, but as far as like having fun, that didn't happen very often. Thankfully for us as kids,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, considering how often we spent in the ocean, swimming at the beach with, I wouldn't say no supervision, but definitely very little parental supervision. I guess that's why they called us the free range kids, the free range generation.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know whether it was the 60s, the hippie culture, but just that era, the Generation X, they get out the house and go play, and we'd go down to the park or go exploring up in the fields or go down to the beach, and didn't see any adults usually until the evening time, dinner time.
Yeah,
at least on the weekends and during the summer.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was the way we handled ourselves. Like we were like almost like young adults, even though we weren't even young adults yet. We weren't even teenagers. We were just preteen kids, but we just had a mannerism about us where we weren't afraid, to get on our bike and ride up to town. I mean, we knew our routes, of course. We knew thankfully you and I both kind of lived on a front street. I mean, I was the front street down there on the beach side, and you were on the front street on the freeway side. And it wasn't like getting lost was a factor, but you did say you did get lost in a orchard one time, right?
Yeah, that hill you were talking about where you go up, and so we decided, let's go exploring, go hiking one day, and so we're hiking around up in the hill, and next thing you know, it's like, how do we get back? How do we get back? And
because it's all
there. Pretty much, we made it home by dark, so that's the important thing.
Dude, it all looks the same, doesn't it? When you're in the orchard, it's like you just got rows and rows of avocados or whatever, whether it was lemons, oranges, avocados, all that stuff. And then, I don't think I ever saw a farmer in those in those orchards ever. It's like the trees just sat there alone. And I mean, I feel like maybe there was some houses that if we really tried hard to figure out whose orchard that was, but we just kind of didn't care. We just went up there and cruised around and adventured.
Yeah, so, I mean that time that we almost got lost, we're up there, and it was a pretty hot day. I guess it was maybe 80s or more, and of course it gets a little bit warmer up away from the ocean, and we were dying of thirst, and luckily we found an irrigation line that was dripping a little bit. So
that's awesome.
Drinking the hose water has a whole different meaning when you're out in the orchard and hot. Definitely nice to have a little drink. I mean, we didn't think about it back then. We just took off on adventures. Now, as we're older, it's like I got to make sure and have a couple beverages, make sure to bring a sandwich, because if I'm going to be gone all day, I'm definitely going to want those things. Younger, no, it was just let's go.
Yeah. And that was before, I think it was before I don't know if the fanny packs were a reinvention, but it seemed like before fanny packs, because I think the fanny packs came along in the maybe early 80s, but we didn't have that yet. I can vaguely remember backpacks, but not a whole lot. I mean, backpacks are more junior high for us.
Yeah, I don't even think I remember having a backpack for school. It was just carry the binder. You had a binder.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then we had the desk there.
Yeah.
So you had your pencils and stuff inside the desk. I guess that's old school. I don't know if they have those around, but that was.
I know, right?
That was definitely cool.
Yeah.
The desk that my girlfriend uses has drawers, so she's got lots of pens and
that's cool
stuff stashed up in her in her desk. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I remember the other kids too. There was some kids in our, and I never had a chance yet to try to find Keith and Lisa Reagan, because those guys were also a pretty cool brother and sister team, and there was some wild ones amongst us. I mean, the kids that just would, I guess, act out for attention. Really, I guess it was some attention type, or making other kids laugh. It was almost like they were built-in comedians before we even knew what that was. They were like, I mean, they were just
absolutely, because back in the day, a lot of the kids were, I guess they call them latchkey kids. They get home from school and the parents would be gone until, 5 or 6 or sometimes 7, because they had to have a job, but definitely, that was kind of cool, because I remember Keith and Lisa there. They had the iguana there, and that was the first time I heard the Rolling Stones. I thought that was super cool. But yeah, back in the day, I guess there still are latchkey kids per se, that come home from school. I'm not sure, I mean, back in the day, it wasn't so hard. You just open the fridge when you got home and get some snacks. It wasn't a big deal, Turn on the TV. I guess some of the kids had the video game, so I guess it's kind of like nowadays with the tablets, because they got something to do, and they're not going to be getting into trouble because they're just in front of the screen.
Right? Yeah, and then the connection that nowadays, kids with phones, it's a little more. Having a kid with a phone, and you can text them or something and then automatically know where they're at. And I guess probably like a Find My Kid app or something,
Oh yeah. With the location, I keep it off, but every now and then, I pull up a map or pull up a search for a store for something, and it asks me, "Oh, what's your location?" So I'll turn the location on. So that's a
classic.
I know that. I guess Find My Phone app. That's a good thing, because if you lose your phone, you can log into the app, and the app will tell you where your phone is at, so you can hopefully find it. Oh, it's in the living room. I looked everywhere. It's under the secret couch or something. You're like, oh,
exactly. It's amazing. I mean, that was just such a special time, really. I mean, that whole time, like that bubble that we were in was quite a cool bubble. And then now it's gotten so wild with, of course, as we talked about before, the prices of the houses now, where, that I don't imagine there'll be more people just living there temporarily, but unless you're very connected to business in Santa Barbara and you're able to raise a family there, I still think you'd be like working class, but it's weird because it's like the prices are so high that it's almost like, it's a league of like second homeowners, third homeowners versus first home buyers, so the first home buyer, I imagine first home buyers, maybe the level that first home buyers are buying in on is the lower level. Let's say under $500,000 would be maybe the most common first buy-in, but you never know. I mean, maybe there's a lot of hits because of the exclusivity of Santa Barbara now, for people to be a desirable place to be. There's definitely something to be said for that,
Yeah, I guess I'm not exactly sure. I think it may be Ashton Kutcher or one of these Hollywood stars. You could afford a house over there in Summerland. And of course, that might be a lot more desirable because, you look at the city. If I'm, a well-known superstar where everybody's a fan, or, millions of fans out there trying to get my autograph or get pictures, and I'm in the city where there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people versus, somewhere like Summerland where, I guess there's maybe a couple thousand people in the complete town. You could go down to the liquor store or go down to the sandwich shop, and as it's not like a big deal. You're not going to have a big crowd of people following you around or paparazzi coming out of every corner. You kind of live a more normal life, I guess. You know, that the issues with being a celebrity is definitely something I've contemplated, you know.
Yeah, I'm imagining also too the kids of those people have an interesting existence because they're put into a place like Summerland just because they're going along with their parents, and then perhaps there's other kids that are in that same circumstance that arrive, let's say for a summer vacation, and their parents are there, and so they're there. So there's probably a little kid population in Summerland that's I don't really know much about now. I mean, I have some friends with kids that are maybe just hit 19, 20, 17 years old. You know, one of my friends has 2 boys, and they're living on the main street in Summerland, and you know, so they're there. You know, but you know, since we're so far out, we can't even see it anymore. I mean, I'd love to be sitting on the porch at your old house, just watching the whole thing go by, you know? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I guess it's been a while. I mean, I used to live, you know, in Grover Beach there in the Central Coast, which was, you know, it wasn't too big of a deal to drive down to Summerland. I would go down there and visit sometimes, you know, less than 2-hour drive. But up here, it's 8+ hour drive. You know, so it's been quite some time. I would say, you know, a good 3 or 4 years since I've gotten to visit.
Yeah.
But I remember the last time I went there, you know, the old warehouse.
Yeah.
Where there's skateboard it's all built in there. Like old mansion or old warehouse. So I was curious one day, so I stopped by that little parking lot there and walked up there, and I'm like, wow, it's still kind of the same, you know. It was just a stick frame. It wasn't really all the way done. I guess they're working on permits, but this gentleman came out and he's like, oh no, I'm the caretaker. I guess it's still under the same family ownership. I wouldn't imagine they would want to sell a property like that, you know, kind of at the end of the road.
Yeah.
And just kind of exclusive and private, looking over the cliff, looking over onto the beach.
For sure. Yeah, there's one character that's down there by what used to be called the Nudie Beach, you know, which was, you know, what was it? South of Summerland, just a little bit. It's like the second entrance to the beach. And there's a guy down there whose house he wanted to do an addition. But I don't think he got permits. And then he got red flagged on the permitting. And then, so as sort of a FU style to the city, he just left it unfinished, and it's still unfinished, I think, to this day. And he actually lets people graffiti on the fences surrounding his house. So he, that guy's a character.
What I'm talking about is,
he used to play volleyball down there. I think sometimes we'd be laughing as kids because he'd actually wear leg warmers, like freaking rainbow leg warmers, playing nude volleyball down, you know, just like a freaking classic characters. I mean, you know, that doesn't happen to all. It's a very, you know, the beach is a unique space all to itself. I mean, I imagine kids who grew up by lakes might have a similar, have had a similar, you know, memories that we do, you know. But it's definitely, the beach provides a whole unique experience as a kid to grow up in. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, you dig in the sand at the shore break, you get the sand crabs. I guess I didn't know about it back then, but they make great bait. You know, you get the sand crabs, put it on your hook, and then cast it out on the shore fishing in the Central Coast there, Pismo Beach, Oceano, Grover Beach. You know, you'd find a lot of fisher people. They still do have the Pismo clam, although they're not as prolific. There's definitely a clam season. You know, sometimes you go out there and they're just everywhere up and down the beach. But you're only allowed a certain number. You're only allowed a certain size. Big, you know, 4 or 5, 6 inches.
Wow.
And you know, you don't see many that big, and I guess they have to be 3 inches or something on there, or you can't keep them.
Oh,
So
wow.
rangers, you know, and the forestry people or the whatever you call them.
Was it called the Fish and Game Department or something?
Yeah, the Fish and Game.
Yeah.
They will definitely tag people, and the fine is pretty big. So you got to make sure if you are doing some clams. When I lived up in Oregon, I remember my mom used to go out and some of her friends would get they call them, I guess, the razor clams. They're not the Pismo round clams. They're more elongated.
Oh, trippy.
But they would definitely pull those out of the sand. As
wow.
They have those tube things with a little hole on it. So you push it down, you see the little bubble on top of the sand, and you push the sand, you push the tube down, and you put your thumb over so that there'd be a vacuum, and you pull up the whole cylinder of sand, and if you were lucky, there would be a clam inside of there.
Wow. Trippy. Yeah, there still is a fair, you know, I want to say a small commercial fishing group in Santa Barbara. You know, like when we were kids, I think commercial fishing was much bigger than it is now in Santa Barbara, at least. I think partially because the regulations in fishing, and maybe just also the livelihood is not as big as it was. Because back then, of course, your money went a lot. It felt like your money went a lot farther, and then the markets, perhaps local markets, were paying a decent price for these guys to go fish and spend the time doing it. But now it's become lesser and lesser. So, you know, you might be bringing in the same amount of fish you brought in, you know, decades ago, but the prices that you're getting, the paycheck essentially isn't as great as it used to be, I guess. The money doesn't go as far. So it's like, all right, forget it. I'm going to go get a job doing construction or something versus doing this, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of a risky business, you know, because you got to have all that equipment. There on the southern coast, they have like those sport fishing boats, so you could pay for the day or the half a day. And I had some friends that would always go out there, and it was, you know, you have your limits, and the captain's kind of does that thing. But a lot of times it'd be full of tourists, so they would go out there, and you know, they would catch their limit, and they'd fillet them up right there on the boat. But then a lot of these tourists, you know, would be like, oh, well, I really don't want to take the fish home. Right. So my buddy, my friends there, they would get, you know, pretty much a boatload of fish. They'd come back with these big, giant bags full of fillets because they'd catch their limit. But then, you know, sometimes on a good day, every single person would catch their limit. So you have a boatload of tourists with 2 guys that are like, yeah, we'll take the fish. And so all the tourists are like, go ahead, you can have it. We don't want it. And so they'd just come home with
classic
huge bags of fish. We'd have some good, you know, fish dinners a lot.
Yeah. Was that in Santa Barbara or was that up north?
That was up north in San Luis County. I guess they went out of Morro Bay.
Yeah. It's interesting how for some reason Santa Barbara, maybe it doesn't feel as wild as up north. And then also, I want to say down south, you know, off the coast of even Ventura, it just feels a little more intense down there than it does in Santa Barbara. The Santa Barbara Channel is a little bit like sheltered because I guess the Channel Islands. But I don't know. It's a little bit of a sanctuary vibe. You know, I'm sure it was more plentiful back when. Maybe it was because it was easy fishing for everybody back in the day, and it's become, you know, a little bit fished out, perhaps, you know?
Yeah, probably, you know, bigger populations, more people, more competition.
Yeah, all that,
you know,
right?
As the equipment, you know, get upgraded, fish finders or, you know, 3D maps. And,
I know. God, it's crazy.
You know, as far as where the best spots are for a certain fish. So, you know, only a certain, you know, you can't have everybody going to the same spot. Otherwise, some issues. I know around here they do a salmon festival, and apparently during that time of year, you know, there's only a certain number of days they allow people to fish for these salmon, and it, I guess, gets crazy. I haven't been down there, but I could just imagine, you know,
it's busy. It's busy because people are trying to get their I guess they stock up and then just throw it in the freezer, I'd imagine, or
Yeah.
just like you said, have a fish fry and rock it out, So yeah, those are the days. I mean, we're definitely blessed to grow up in such a beautiful place. That's for darn sure, So cheers to Santa Barbara, man.
Cheers to Santa Barbara. Cheers to the fishermen. If you like fish and chips.
I know Avila Beach, Grover Beach, all those beaches up there. I mean, those are all amazing communities. I mean, we're blessed in Santa Barbara too, but there's something special about the more wild spaces, like I said, up north is a little more wild and a little more cool, So,
absolutely.
Anyways, all right, man. Good show.
All right, brother. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Sounds good.